Hey, my name is Leanne, and I'm fascinated with helping women navigate how to eat, move, and care for their bodies. This has taken me on a journey from vegan, keto, high protein to everything in between. I'm a small town holistic nutritionist turned 3-time international bestselling author turned functional medicine practitioner, offering telemedicine services around the globe to women looking to better their health and stop second-guessing themselves. I'm here to teach you how to wade through the wellness noise to get to the good stuff that'll help you achieve your goals. Whether you're seeking relief from chronic ailments, striving for peak performance, or simply eager to live a more vibrant life, this podcast is your go-to resource for actionable advice and inspiration. Together, we'll uncover the interconnectedness of nutrition, movement, sleep, stress management, and mindset, empowering you to make informed choices that support your unique health journey. Think of it as quality time with your bestie mixed with a little med school so you're empowered at your next doctor visit. Get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn about your body and how to care for it healthfully. Join me as we embrace vitality, reclaim our innate potential, and discover what it truly means to pursue healthfulness. Hello and welcome. I'm excited to chat about today's topic, which is nicotine. I don't know if maybe there was a podcast episode that was released recently from somebody and people are just asking me left, right, sideways, and inside out what I think about nicotine. And I really didn't have any thoughts. So when I don't have thoughts on a topic and people ask me enough, I decide to make thoughts. So I dove deep into the research and I have some thoughts now. So I wanted to dedicate it to an episode because why did I study all that stuff and then keep it to myself? So here we go. I know it's going to sound a little bit wild, but what if nicotine wasn't actually the villain that we've been taught that it is? I'm not talking about smoking or vaping or anything that wrecks your lungs. I'm talking about nicotine as a compound, one that's been studied for its ability to improve memory, focus, and even protect the brain as we age. Now, these sorts of conversations where we get into certain compounds, if you're not eating a whole food-based diet and moving your body and getting sunshine, please just start there. Drink water, go with the basics, get your sleep on point. But I think that this topic needs to be discovered as somebody that has a mother with Parkinson's, I do get asked quite a lot if we're using nicotine in her treatment plan. And so I hope that this can benefit some individuals that are maybe going through this. Some researchers are calling nicotine one of the most misunderstood substances in modern health. And no one is talking about this. I think it has definitely picked up in the last 6 months or so. There have been some YouTubers that are starting to post around using nicotine in pre-workouts and individuals with brain damage and those sorts of things posting about it. So I think that it's definitely gaining traction. My question is could a little nicotine gum actually help with mental clarity, hunger regulation, ADHD symptoms without the addiction spiral that we all fear? So in this episode, I want to set out to peel back the layers of this pretty controversial topic. I would say that it's controversial. And we'll talk about what nicotine is, how it affects the brain, what the science is saying, and how some people are using it in pretty safe and intentional ways without lighting anything on fire. So I'll also share my take on whether I think that it's something I'd ever use and how to weigh the risks if you're biohacking your way to better health. So let's talk about nicotine, specifically for your brain. I'm not recommending that you buy a pack of smokes and go at it. So let's start at the very beginning. What is nicotine? Because for most of us, that word immediately is wrapped up in a whole mess of associations like cigarettes, addiction, cancer, yellow teeth, maybe a family member who's smoked for decades and smells like an ashtray. The word itself feels super heavy and negative. And in fact, in my intake form, if a prospective client says that they smoke, I will not take them on as a client. So I am not saying let's pick up cigarettes and start smoking. But here's the truth. Nicotine as a compound is not the same thing as smoking. So nicotine is a naturally occurring alkaloid, kind of like caffeine, that's found in the nightshade family of plants. So that includes tobacco, as a nightshade, but it also includes tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, and peppers. So nicotine actually is a natural pesticide to protect these items from pests. These foods do contain nicotine. The amounts are typically measured in micrograms per kilogram, which is like far less than milligrams found in a single cigarette. So you actually eat trace amounts of nicotine regularly, and it's not just unique to cigarettes. It's actually part of the chemical defense system that plants use to protect themselves from these pests. And in tiny doses, it affects the human brain in some pretty interesting ways. So nicotine is a stimulant. It works by binding to, they're like receptors. Okay, they're called nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. These are in the brain and the nervous system. And these receptors are part of what helps us regulate things like attention, memory, mood, and alertness. So when nicotine hits these receptors, it can trigger the release of neurotransmitters like dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin. It's really not unlike caffeine, which is also part of a plant-based stimulants that alters neurotransmitter activity to give us energy and focus. So while caffeine works by blocking adenosine, nicotine's magic is how it mimics acetylcholine. So acetylcholine is the learning and memory neurotransmitter. It's absolutely vital for cognitive function, attention, and even muscle movement. It's required for our muscles to fire. So it's also one of the very first systems to decline in conditions like Alzheimer's. So when nicotine binds to these receptors, it's essentially lighting up parts of the brains and communication pathways. And that's why many users describe enhanced focus, mental clarity, and even a calm productivity. Now, I've not personally used it in this way. I was a smoker for many, many, many years. In fact, I even smoked through nutrition school, if you can believe it. And I always said, it helped calm me down, the smoke breaks in between work or study, and it helped me focus. And so I could understand from that perspective, but I've never personally tried nicotine as a nootropic agent. So obviously, most of us didn't learn any of this in school. We were taught that nicotine equals cigarettes and cigarettes equal cancer. End of story. Just like I was taught, keto equals death in nutrition school. But the reality is far more nuanced. Yes, smoking is incredibly harmful, and I am so thankful that I quit. In fact, fun story. I met Kevin right after I had finished nutrition school. I had just bought my first condo. I think I was 20 years old or thereabouts. And Kevin and I got really, really serious. And he was like, I'm going to bring you out to the island, Vancouver Island, to meet my mom, but she hates smokers. You cannot smoke. You can't smell like smoke. You can't hide the fact that you smoke. You have to stop smoking. And I loved this man so much. I was like, okay, I guess I'm no longer a smoker. Let me tell you. Wow. And that was 19 years ago. So cigarettes contain over 7,000 chemicals, and many of them are toxic and carcinogenic. But nicotine is not what causes cancer. In fact, studies have shown that nicotine itself isn't classified as a carcinogen at all. The dangers of smoking come from the tar, the carbon monoxide, the combustion process, and all the additives in the cigarettes. So when we separate nicotine from its toxic delivery system in the form of vapes and all of those things, we're left with a compound that's, I would say, still controversial for sure, but also pharmacologically interesting, I would say. It's a psychoactive drug that has effects on the brain and body, but not necessarily in a dangerous or damaging way if used in small, controlled amounts. So I'm not out here saying absolutely try nicotine, go to your local drugstore and pick up some gum. Not at all. But I've set out to truly understand this, both from a personal perspective, and when people ask me, I'll have an opinion, and also for my mother, so we can determine whether or not this is good for her care. So nicotine has been used therapeutically for decades, it looks like. There are FDA-approved products like nicotine patches, gum, lozenges, and even prescription sprays used for smoking cessation. But what's fascinating is that the benefits people report from those tools, like more energy, better concentration, appetite control, are often dismissed as side effects. And what if they're actually effects, like not accidents, but features of the nicotine product itself? So this is where the conversation really opens up, because if nicotine is effective at improving attention and memory, could it have a role in treating ADHD? I don't know. I'm just asking these questions. Like, could it play a role in supporting perimenopause brain fog? Could it help people regulate appetite or boost mood in like a non-hormonal way? The answer isn't totally black or white, and I'm not setting out to answer those deep questions, but it's more of a conversation that I want us to have and start thinking about whether or not this is something that we would entertain, especially as women. We're often left out of the biohacking spaces, or like there's this new trend of biohacking where like everything is dangerous. Have you noticed? Like, don't do this, it'll kill you. Like, I'm just so tired of it. I'm a practitioner and I get frustrated. I couldn't even imagine not knowing what I know and then jumping on Instagram and feeling okay with it. So if something is working for men in Silicon Valley, it's often dismissed as too risky or too edgy for women, or women just aren't part of the conversation. But we really deserve to know like what's out there and become informed. And this information that we have then leads us to make empowered choices. So let's move really into the science and the facts, because this research is still unfolding, especially in the context of women's health. And there's a growing body of evidence around nicotine and cognition that surprised me, to be honest. So let's go through how nicotine affects the body and the brain overall. So now that we've kind of like separated out nicotine from smoking, that I know for me, it was like, well, absolutely not. I'm not going to do nicotine. It's addictive and terrible. So let's get into like the science behind it, because that's where things start to get pretty interesting. So when nicotine enters the body, whether through a patch or gum or spray or like a non-smoking method, it travels really quickly through the bloodstream and crosses the blood-brain barrier within seconds. Once in the brain, it binds to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors I mentioned earlier. And these receptors are part of a communication system that helps regulate many of the things that women tell me that they're struggling with, like energy, focus, motivation, emotional balance. And when nicotine binds those receptors, it triggers a cascade of neurochemical activity, including the release of dopamine, which helps us stay focused, motivated, even feel rewarded. One of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years is having a mother with Parkinson's is how essential dopamine is. Like dopamine is your, let's get it. Ooh, let's go. Ooh, like without dopamine, you are a sloth. You're just like, yeah, maybe today. And we joke about the sloth life, but it's a special kind of torture not having enough dopamine. Another neurochemical that's released when we have nicotine in our system is norepinephrine. So this actually increases alertness and attention. Then we have serotonin, which stabilizes mood and helps with emotional resilience. And then we have beta endorphins, which reduce pain and create a mild sense of euphoria. So what's fascinating is that nicotine, when used in small, controlled doses, doesn't necessarily act like that jolt of caffeine. You know, like when we take 3 espressos and we're like, let's go. It's not like that at all. It's more nuanced, because people often describe it as a sense of calm focus, like being locked in on a task without feeling wired or overstimulated. So this is the part why nicotine is being studied for its effect on attention, memory, and learning, especially in conditions of ADHD, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even age-related cognitive decline. Now, if you haven't looked at creatine in high doses, around 20 to 30 grams per day for age-related cognitive decline, please do, because it's highly studied as well. Now, a review published in the Journal of Neuropharmacology looked at multiple studies and found that nicotine can enhance working memory and attention in both healthy adults and those with cognitive impairments. So some small studies even showed that improvement in reaction time and information processing speed. So that's not a small deal when you consider how many women in midlife are dealing with brain fog, mental fatigue, mood swings, especially in perimenopause and post-birth control recovery. My thoughts on this though, like as I was going through this, is I work with these women day in and day out. And I would say 75% of the time, it's because they're not eating enough. And so realistically looking at how much food that you're eating and understanding why maintenance is so important. I actually did an episode on this, episode 524, that was released May 6th of 2025. It's called Why Maintenance is the Secret to the Body That You Want. So if you're dealing with a significant amount of brain fog, mental fatigue, mood swings, and you're eating an 800 calorie diet, that could be why. And so please don't play around with other things until you're eating enough. And that's what I'm talking about. Like the basics need to be covered before you're biohacking with a nicotine patch. So there's also evidence that nicotine may stimulate neuroplasticity. So this is the brain's ability to form new connections, which is especially exciting when we talk about recovery from trauma, long COVID, or chronic stress. I've actually used nicotine patches cut up into little pieces for COVID recovery for long COVID cases. And I was pretty impressed with the results when people are just stuck. So let's pause for a moment and be honest. Just because something lights up your brain doesn't mean that it's automatically good for you. So nicotine does increase heart rate and blood pressure temporarily. It stimulates the adrenal system, which can lead to short bursts of cortisol and epinephrine. So this is the part that makes it mildly addictive because it feels good for the nervous system. And that's where the risk lies. As myself personally, based on the fact that it could affect the adrenals and mess with epinephrine, that kind of raises a red flag for me personally for my health. But I could see how if your nervous system is dysregulated and you're like, I just need to regulate myself, it could be an option. Now, in smoking, the delivery is constant and aggressive, which is the part that makes cigarettes so addictive. But when people use low dose nicotine gum or patches like intentionally and intermittently, the data actually shows a much lower potential for dependency, especially if you're not pairing it with sugar or caffeine or emotional habits. So there was a paper in 2020 that was released in the Psychopharmacology that looked at non-smokers who were given low doses of nicotine and tracked for dependency. The vast majority did not become dependent, and many lost their interest in using it altogether once the novelty wore off. So that's very different from the constant delivery through cigarettes or vape pens, where the spike crash pattern creates both like a physical and behavioral addiction. And I can speak to that absolutely. You know, you just Jones for another cigarette. So can nicotine improve mental performance? I would say yes. Can it boost mood and increase alertness and even reduce symptoms of anxiety or ADHD in people? I would say yes. But should you run out and start chewing nicotine gum? I would say no, not necessarily. Like anything that alters brain chemistry, it needs to be used with a clear intention and awareness of risk and like a solid understanding of your own body's needs. So like in that example, as I'm going through the impact that it can have on adrenal function, with myself personally and knowing my body, my adrenals, I try my best. They're definitely better than they were 10 years ago. Are they perfect? No, ma'am. And as I experience the beginning stages of perimenopause at 39, that's going to be a great gift for the next 10 years as I transition into menopause. Woo! Adrenals are needed more and more for the production of hormones. And so we want to make sure that our adrenals are supported. And for us women, especially those of us navigating these hormonal shifts or caregiving or careers, and we're trying to stay well in the chaotic life that is the world, the idea that we could reclaim even a little bit of focus and mental energy without reaching for another coffee or an antidepressant, it's really compelling. And I think it's worth knowing about, even if you never try it. Now, for myself personally with ADHD and things that I've talked about here on the podcast, I rely more heavily on bioactive peptides for my focus. There's actually a product called Focus that helps with mental clarity, memory support, sharper concentration. And it's a blend of ginkgo peptides, Lutamax brain, and Bacopa to help reduce mental fatigue, neurotransmitter balance, protects against blue light strain. And that's what I feel very, very comfortable using for my focus and ability to concentrate. Element makes it simple to stay hydrated with a clinical dose of electrolytes, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams magnesium. No sugar, no junk, just what your body actually needs. As a practitioner, I love that Element offers a raw, unflavored option, perfect if you're avoiding sweeteners or additives. It's an easy go-to for supporting adrenal health, proper muscle function, and overall hydration, especially for those on a low-carb diet or fasting protocols. Whether you're training hard, working long days, or just prone to feeling sluggish and depleted on a low-carb diet, this can help. Right now, Element is offering a free 8-stick sample pack with any purchase. You'll get to try their most popular flavors, including citrus, raspberry, watermelon, and orange. Go to drinklmnt.com/KDP for your purchase and get your free 8-stick sample pack. Again, that's drinklmnt.com/KDP. Coming up next, I want to talk about how people are actually using nicotine in like real life examples, especially in the like safer non-smoking delivery methods, and kind of what the risks are as they embark on that. So let's get into it. So we've looked at the science. Let's talk about what actually happens in real life. So when nicotine is used intentionally, small controlled doses without smoking, what are the benefits that people are reporting? Let's focus on one thing at a time. Focus. So nicotine is widely known to improve attention span, task switching, sustained concentration. This is part of why it's being explored as a potential treatment for ADHD, particularly in people who don't respond well to stimulants like Adderall or Ritalin, which I've been on both. They made me so messy. Those who want a non-pharmaceutical option, and even some neurodivergent adults have been reporting using low-dose nicotine gum to support focus during work or study sessions, and it helps them feel calmer and more present and less scattered. Oftentimes, these individuals don't respond as well to caffeine. So this benefit specifically isn't limited to those with ADHD. Many people, especially women in perimenopause, experience what we would call as like brain fog. And it's the frustrating inability to find the right word, to stay focused on a task, or retain information from a podcast or book. Maybe you're listening and you're like, I think she likes nicotine, or what are we talking about? Early research suggests that nicotine can help to sharpen cognitive performance in situations like this. It's not a cure, but it might be a tool. I think maybe a better option to look at first, obviously, is eating more, moving, getting outside, looking at your schedule. Like, why are we totally not able to concentrate? It could be because we stack our schedule so loaded that we're just all over the place, and might not have anything to do with anything other than we put it on ourselves. Creatine is a great option, but you do need to take a significant amount. And there are women that when they take creatine, they just waterlog so much, and it's just not an option. I do think that the Focus peptide is a safer option to start with, and I'll include the link in the show notes if you want to look at that. So that's the Focus. Then there's the memory enhancement piece. So nicotine's stimulation of the acetylcholine receptors helps with learning and short-term memory. In fact, studies have shown that nicotine may protect against memory loss in early Alzheimer's or age-related cognitive decline. So one clinical trial from the early 2000s showed that non-smoking adults with mild cognitive impairment had improved attention and memory after using transdermal nicotine patches over several weeks. Again, this isn't a magic fix. Please do not hear me saying, just take this, it'll be great. But it is promising, especially when you think about supporting the brain health, like preventatively, and starting to think about at the beginning stages of this, how do I support my brain? Another area that's surprisingly well documented is appetite suppression and weight management. So this is a big reason why people have historically reached for cigarettes. It's one of the reasons why I continue to smoke. And it's also why many people gain weight after they quit smoking, because nicotine helps regulate hunger. So in low doses, it can reduce cravings and promote a sense of fullness. And I want to be really clear here. I'm not suggesting that anyone use nicotine to lose weight. But if you're somebody struggling with emotional eating or that 3 p.m. sugar crash that leads to snacking, nicotine may offer a short-term tool to help stabilize things while you build better habits. Let's say that I was really struggling with eating a whole bunch and I just couldn't get a handle on it. From a functional wellness perspective, I would definitely test my insulin and my glucose and my leptin. I would probably move my body more. I would assess whether or not this is an emotional thing. I would probably avoid GLP-1 at all costs. That would be like in an order of operations. If I was like, I need something to help me, I would probably start, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but it is true. I would probably start with a bioactive peptide, like in Lean or Fit. I'll include the link in the show notes. Then I would probably move to nicotine. And then I would choose a GLP-1 and kind of in that order. And these are like the common things that I get asked questions about. The reason why I've seen microdosing of GLP-1 do amazing things for individuals that are metabolically stuck, but it would be the last resort only because of the issues that it can cause with metabolic flexibility long-term, especially with muscle reduction. So let's talk about the mood regulation aspect of nicotine, because nicotine increases dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and it can act as a sort of fast-acting mood stabilizer for some people. So this is why researchers have explored its use in treating depression, anxiety, and even schizophrenia. So there's something about how nicotine temporarily improves executive function and emotional flexibility that makes people feel more emotionally steady. And I'm one of those people, like, if emotionally people are absolutely stuck and you're absolutely in a rut, literally do anything to fix that. I think that myself personally, when I'm emotionally dysregulated, it's usually because I haven't spent time with the Lord. I'm lacking in prayer and I'm trying to figure out everything myself. And the emotional aspect of things, when it's not dialed in, everything is affected. And I know that if you've struggled with this, then you know what I mean. So I'll be honest, like this is one of the reasons I've been super curious about it. So as women, we're often told that our mood swings are hormonal or are stress-based, or it's just part of being sensitive. But what if, especially during hormonal transitions, we're actually experiencing a neurotransmitter imbalance, like an actual issue? And what if something as small as a 1 milligram piece of gum could help rebalance that for a few hours? Like, if you've been through the emotional swings, you know that a few hours of just feeling regulated would make such a difference. Of course, this doesn't mean that it's the right choice for everyone, by far from that at all. And we'll get into the risks in the next section. I wanted to lay out the potential here because I think too many people, especially in the wellness world, is very separated. It's become so complicated. I think that there are people that genuinely are looking for truth and going where the science goes, and they're not afraid to like change their mind as new stuff comes out. Then there's people that use fear to get people to change. There's people that are still stuck in what they were saying 20 years ago and they haven't changed at all. And I think there are people in the wellness world that are unable to, I'm not sure why, just like have an honest conversation and display things for people. And I think those people who are unwilling to look at common threads in people's health may write off nicotine entirely without knowing the full story. Like, I would say that I was definitely in that camp when people started asking me about nicotine. I was like, oh man, I wouldn't touch that. And then I was like, that's not really fair. I don't know enough about it to really say that. And then at the same time, I had a client ask like, hey, do you think I should try nicotine for long COVID? I'm like, what? And so I started researching. I'm like, yeah, actually, let's try it. Right. So I think it's really important to just keep your mind open. I'm not out here glorifying nicotine or calling it the next super supplement. It's just about asking like, what tools exist that we haven't explored because of stigma? And what could help us feel a little more like ourselves again, especially when everything feels foggy or heavy or scattered or too much. So with that in mind, let's dig into the delivery methods, because how we take it matters just as much as like what we're taking and how much. So let's say that you're curious about doing nicotine. You're thinking, okay, like maybe nicotine isn't the villain that I thought it was. And maybe if I'm not going to smoke, like how would I even do that? So this is where the delivery method makes a huge difference, because just like we wouldn't recommend drinking coffee through an exhaust pipe, although I will recommend taking coffee up the butt anytime, we shouldn't evaluate nicotine based on its most toxic delivery system, which is cigarettes. So let's start with the ugly, like smoking and vaping, never a good idea at all. This is a deal breaker for me. I don't care what benefits nicotine might offer. When it's inhaled through combustion or heated oils, it's a hard no. And the same thing goes for THC. I think that THC is a fabulous product that can be used responsibly, just like nicotine. But the delivery method matters, the amount matters, and cigarettes and vapes deliver nicotine fast, but they also flood the body with thousands of harmful compounds, like in the case of cigarettes, tar, carbon monoxide, formaldehyde, acetone, heavy metals, and vapes will do a lot of that as well. And that stuff causes cancer, respiratory disease, cardiovascular damage, and stuff you cannot repair from. Like I said, I quit cigarettes 19 years ago, and my lungs are still my weak pathway, still. So vaping is often marketed as a cleaner option. Still, it delivers ultrafine particles into your lungs, along with questionable flavoring chemicals that haven't been studied long-term, especially on the lungs. And there's this behavioral dependency. It's still ritual. There's still that hand-to-mouth fixation. And it creates a long-term addiction pattern. Even today, if I watch somebody holding a cigarette, I'm like, I want one. I want one. And I know I don't, but it's just that hand-to-mouth fixation that's just so hard to kick, even after almost 2 decades. So if you're curious about nicotine, this method is not worth the cost, period, without a doubt. Like, do not. So let's talk about the like not so great, maybe like nicotine pouches or lozenges, and these are placed between the gum and cheek and dissolve slowly. They're discreet and portable and deliver nicotine without the smoke, but many contain like artificial sweeteners, synthetic fillers, and in some cases even tobacco-derived nicotine instead of like purified pharmaceutical grade nicotine. And some of the newer brands on the market are better. They have cleaner formulations, lower doses. But this is where you really have to read the label, like your life depends on it. A lot of like offshoot brands will create like really subpar products. So you want to look for brands that are, disclose their ingredients, because actually there are a lot that don't, and use nicotine bitartrate. So it's bitartrate or similar pharmaceutical forms, and aim doses around like 1 to 2 milligrams per pouch. And a lot of these were way higher, the ones that I looked at. So the better option, if I could choose, would probably be the nicotine gum and patches. So these are FDA approved for smoking cessation, but have found a second life in the cognitive enhancement space. So the gum is probably the most common option. And I've seen a lot of like bodybuilders use this as a pre-workout actually. And it comes in low doses, usually like 2 to 4 milligrams, and it can be cut in half or you like in quarters. So you just start with 1 milligram or even less. And that's often a pretty high dose for somebody that's just experimenting or using it occasionally. Like, I don't think we need to go over 1 milligram personally often. So what's important here is really how it's used. You don't chew it like regular gum. You chew once or twice, then like park it in between your cheek and gum. And this allows for a slow absorption through the mucosal lining of your mouth. And that does the whole blood-brain barrier thing. And it will also lead to a better uptake and like fewer jitters and like a hit of the nicotine. The patch, on the other hand, delivers nicotine more gradually, like over several hours, which I do like. It's like a steadier stream and avoids the peak crash cycle completely. This might be useful for somebody that's experimenting specifically for mood and attention support, like across the day, but it's less ideal for somebody that needs like a quick brain boost. So like if you're looking for a quick brain boost, I would do the gum versus like an ongoing, like steady state for emotions, and I would more so do the patch. So let's be clear about something. Just because the gum and patches are cleaner doesn't mean that they're risk-free. So you still need to consider dosage, frequency, and your body's response to the product. Oftentimes, I don't know if you're like this, but when I find something new, I'm like, I don't even care if I respond negatively to it. I'm going to give it time. There are people who totally can use nicotine 1 to 2 times a week for a little edge, and others who quickly begin to like crave the stimulation every day. And that's where self-awareness really matters. So here's kind of how I see it. If you're going to explore nicotine, think of it like as a way that you think about a pre-workout or nootropics or adaptogens. You use it with a purpose, right? I'm setting out to use nicotine for X. You cycle it, right? Like I'm going to commit to doing it Tuesday and Friday for the next 2 weeks. And most of all, if you get to the second week and you're feeling weird, please stop, listen to your body. Some people will love how focused and productive they feel, while others will just feel weird and wired and anxious and nauseous. And the nervous system is picky. And I know my nervous system, she is very sensitive. I don't think that this would be a good idea for me. If you're already under like a lot of stress or dealing with adrenal fatigue, this might not be the time to throw in a stimulant, even a mild one. For me, if I were to test it, I'd probably start off with like 50 micrograms or like half a milligram of gum once or twice a week. And only on days where I really felt like I needed deep focus, on days where I felt kind of mentally scattered, I'd probably avoid pairing it with caffeine or pay really close attention to sleep, heart rate variability, irritability. The delivery matters like a lot. I would probably do the gum initially because I would know, okay, worst case scenario, this is going to be a hit. This is as worst as it's going to get before I put a patch on. If you're going to play with a tool like this, I'd say like skip the smoke, go for something clean and precise and trackable. You've heard of protein, you've heard of collagen, and even amino acids. But bioactive peptides, these are short amino acid chains that signal your cells to take action. They're not just nutritional building blocks, they're functional messengers. Make Wellness is pioneering a new class of oral plant-based bioactive peptides that influence everything from muscle growth to fat metabolism to brain health and inflammation. Unlike collagen peptides, which only provide raw material, bioactive precision peptides are encrypted in a protein matrix and designed to survive digestion, cross into the bloodstream, and communicate with your DNA. The result: faster muscle repair, better metabolic control, stronger resilience, and is perfect for women over 35, especially during perimenopause, post-illness recovery, or when workouts no longer deliver the same results. I like to think of it as, let's say you take vitamin C and your goal is that the vitamin C will support your immune function. But vitamin C does so much more than that. What if you could take a vitamin C that was structured in a way that would directly influence immune system with nothing else? It was a direct immune system function. This is what bioactive peptides are doing. They're amino structures that have been changed and adjusted for targeted results. I am so excited about bioactive peptides. And if you feel like you've been doing everything right and still feel like your body isn't responding, this may be your missing link. I personally take these products I've loved the Focused to help with my ADD. I've enjoyed taking the Fit as a pre-workout to adjust body recomposition. I'm taking the Lean to help with insulin regulation and appetite as I cut down on my calories. I've been doing Hydrated instead of taking Element, which was getting me bloated. I've been doing Calm to help me chill down when I'm a little bit anxious and overwhelmed. It's a fabulous suite of products. You can go to healthfulpursuit.com/make or check out the link in the show notes to get all the details. Yeah, let's talk about who shouldn't use nicotine at all and why some people are better off just like leaving this tool in the box. Like you got a toolbox, now you know nicotine could be part of it, but you're like, nah, not for me right now. So we've unpacked some of the possible benefits and explored like safer delivery methods. So let's talk about the other side, like because nicotine, even clean, low doses, is not for everyone. In fact, some people I think could actually make things worse. Like I would take extreme caution or skip altogether. If you have any sort of cardiovascular issues, nicotine is a stimulant. It increases heart rate. It can raise blood pressure, sometimes only slightly, sometimes more significantly. So this will completely depend on your physiology. So if you have a history of high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, stroke, heart disease, even small doses could be risky for you. This is not a kind of supplement that I'd be like, yeah, try it out. No, I would check with your provider that you really trust. I probably wouldn't play with this. Also, I kind of hinted at this. The second group that I would say is probably not a good fit is those with a sensitive nervous system, especially those prone to anxiety, panic attacks, overstimulation. Like you're the person on the bus when the dinger goes off and you're like, it's so loud. Or the people that are really sensitive to supplementation. While nicotine can cause like a calming for some, for others, it can totally trigger a wired but tired, jittery, unsettling feeling. So if you've ever overdone caffeine and felt your heart race, your hands sweat, your thoughts spin, nicotine could probably have a similar effect. And in perimenopause, where our stress response is just already heightened and a little bit unpredictable, it's even more important to tread carefully. So please hear me on that. I also want to be like super clear. If you have a history of addiction or dependency, whether that's food or alcohol or stimulants, I would just be cautious of this. I think us addicts know that we're addicts and nicotine works on the dopamine system. So for some people, that little reward loop where we lift our focus, we get a gentle pressure hit, it can become very hard to resist, especially when life feels heavy or mental energy is low. So if you know that you tend to like lean toward like substances to get you through the day, nicotine could be a trap that you just don't want to get caught up in. And of course, like pregnant women, teens should never use nicotine in any form. It can interfere with fetal development. It has long-term effects on a developing brain. So there's no benefit to a risk at this stage of life. So if you're navigating fertility or hormone balance, this is not your compound to take before working to get pregnant. There's one more category that I want to highlight, and that's anyone who's like absolutely running on empty. And I kind of highlighted that earlier. If you're exhausted, burnt out, your adrenals are just barely holding it together, and adding a stimulant, even a mild one, can make you feel better short term, but like worse over time. And it's the same story we see with coffee. You can feel amazing for a few days and then the crash hits. And now you just need more to feel normal. It's not regulation, it's compensation, and it never works out. So always ask this. Are you using it to elevate or are you using it to survive? If the answer is survival, do not do it. If you're running on stress hormones all day, if you've underslept, you're overextended, your brain needs nourishment, the stimulation aspect shouldn't be part of it because nicotine is still a strong compound. It deserves respect. And if you're going to experiment with it, you need to know where your body stands first. So let's get into like the big pharma ethics addiction stuff. So if nicotine has all of these potential benefits like better focus, mood support, even neuroprotection, why aren't more people using it in this way? So like, why aren't we seeing it sold at Whole Foods in a cute little tincture bottle labeled like brain boost next to ashwagandha and magnesium? Well, here's where it gets like a little bit messy. Nicotine sits at the intersection of public health policy, addiction science, corporate greed, and decades of cultural conditioning. So the story isn't just about a compound, it's about who controls it, who profits from it, how it's been weaponized over time. So first we have to acknowledge the damage that big tobacco has done. For decades, like cigarette companies have intentionally downplayed the risks of smoking. They've manipulated nicotine levels to help people get hooked, very similar to what we see in the food industry. They've targeted vulnerable groups, including women and teens, and they've pushed smoking into pop culture in a way, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, that make it look rebellious and sexy and even empowering, when really it was just an addiction to a slick package. So when public health finally fought back, like rightfully, nicotine got swept into the backlash, and it wasn't just tobacco that was vilified. It was like the molecule itself, and researchers who wanted to explore the therapeutic use of nicotine faced resistance, skepticism, and a lack of funding. So here's the irony though, like pharmaceutical companies sell nicotine in patches, gum, lozenges, sprays, and they've quietly known of the cognitive effects for decades, but because it's associated with addiction, no one was racing out to fund like a flashy new wellness product with nicotine like front and center. It's risky. It's marketing risky. It's too controversial and frankly, like not profitable enough to overhaul public perception. So there's also a use of addiction ethics. So even though low dose nicotine doesn't seem to be as addictive or addictive in the same way as smoking, the potential for dependency is still there. And public health officials worry, and rightfully so, about normalizing a substance that could pull people into patterns that they can't easily step out of, especially if people think, oh, it's just gum, it's healthy now. So when there's a gender gap in research, most of the nicotine studies you'll hear about have been done on men. So even when we hear that nicotine improves memory or supports ADHD symptoms, we don't always know, like, do these benefits translate to women, especially women in perimenopause or with hormonal fluctuations? Once again, we're kind of like left to figure it out ourselves. So we've got a compound with promise buried under decades of cultural fear, corporate manipulation, ethical gray zones. And because of that, the people who benefit or might benefit from it, those of us who aren't interested in smoking, who just want better focus, less brain fog, more energy, we're kind of like left in the dark. But I think it's changing slowly and people are asking more questions and data is available. So more and more researchers are starting to ask the hard questions and more biohackers are experimenting with intention. And conversations like this one, they really do matter because they open the door to a new kind of thinking, one that's curious and nuanced and willing to explore like a middle ground. That, like, I love that. So in this final section, I'll just share my take, whether, tried nicotine, what I'd recommend if you're curious, and like how to think about this as a tool and not a crush. So have I tried it? No, I really don't have much of an interest in trying it. Like I have things pretty locked in for my nutrition and wellness. I don't think that this is a tool that I need. I don't think that I need the sort of nootropic. Like I said, the bioactive precision peptides have been great, specifically the focused. I think I'm dialed in on that point. I would say if you are feeling curious, here's what I would recommend. I would definitely know your baseline. So if your sleep is a mess, if your blood sugar is crashing, or your stress is through the roof, fix those things first. Nicotine won't solve the foundational issues. It may mask them, but it only delays like the true healing. I would say if after you've done that and you want to play around with it, I would say start small, like lower than you think. Like 1 milligram can be noticeable. You can even cut a 2 milligram gum into quarters and start there. If you just want to have it in your mouth for a little bit and then spit it out and just observe. Like, don't overwhelm your system. I would say use it with intention. Like choose a task, writing, studying, focusing on work, and use it sparingly. Think of it as a tool that you pull out for creative flow or mental clarity, not something that you need to get through every day. And then I would say, watch your patterns. If you notice yourself reaching for it when you're bored or emotional or needing a dopamine hit, pause. Okay. That's a signal. This isn't about chasing stimulation. It's about enhancing clarity, like when you're already regulated. And I would say never pair it with smoking or vaping or excessive caffeine. That's how you create a stimulant like stack that's just totally overwhelming to your nervous system. Nicotine is powerful enough. Please don't also pair it with caffeine. And finally, don't feel pressure to try it at all. Like this episode isn't about pushing a new supplement or a trend. It's about just reclaiming curiosity and questioning assumptions, which I love doing. I always want to explore what's possible and in the context of understanding our own biology in a deeper way. So women deserve access to these conversations. Like we deserve to be trusted with the nuance. And if nothing else, I hope that this episode made you think like, wow, I had no idea. Because that moment, like that curiosity, like that's where change starts. When we start to see like, wow, I didn't know about that. That's so cool. One piece to go. So now I'd love to hear from you. Like after listening to this episode, how do you feel about nicotine? Is it a hard no? Like, are you surprised? Have you tried it before? Are you feeling curious? I'd love for you to just message me on Instagram at Leanne Vogel and chat with me about what you thought. So here's your challenge. I would say start thinking about one wellness tool that you've written off because of stigma. Maybe it's coffee enemas and do a little bit of digging. Like, is there more nuance there? Is there something that you dismissed out of fear or judgment that might actually deserve a second look? So often the very things that we push aside as being like absolutely wackadoodle crazy are the things that will move the needle the most for us. Like it doesn't have to be nicotine. It could be creatine or heavy lifting or therapy or learning to say no. Like we grow when we stay open, and when we stop letting outdated narratives define what's healthy, that's when things just start to come together for us. So I hope that you enjoyed our episode. Until next Tuesday, I hope you have a great rest of your week. Okay, bye. Thanks for listening to the Healthful Pursuit Podcast. Join us next Tuesday for another episode of the show. If you're looking for free resources, there are a couple of places you can go. The first to my blog, healthfulpursuit.com, where you're going to find loads of recipes. The second is a free parasite protocol that I've put together for you that outlines symptoms, testing, and resources to determine whether or not you have a parasite, plus a full protocol to follow to eradicate them from your life if you need to. That's available at healthfulpursuit.com/parasites. And last but certainly not least, a full list of blood work markers to ask your doctor for so that you can get a full picture of your health. You can grab that free resource by going to healthfulpursuit.com/labs. The Healthful Pursuit Podcast, including show notes and links, provides information in respect to healthy living, recipes, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Healthful Pursuit Podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without any representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified health practitioner with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.